I think we're going to get started. My name is Erin Kennedy. I am the new Executive Director for the Environmental Defenders. Seeing lots of familiar faces from Saturday's Corn Roast, so it's nice to see you guys again. But I want to thank you guys for taking time out of your day. You'll get some more information about solar. We've got some really great community leaders here with the Citizens Climate Lobby as well as CUB. You're going to get a lot of great kind of personalized information. You're going to learn about incentives and lots of kind of rebates or ways to get involved with solar. I think for a long time people were kind of waiting, you know, to add solar to their home or to their community. Everybody was told for a long time maybe wait a little bit longer, but now is the time. There's great incentives, and here in Illinois we've really become leaders in the world of solar. So hopefully you guys will get some good usable information, and just wanted to welcome you guys and thank you guys again. If anybody is interested, the Defenders is having another event going on this evening at Kishwaukee Brewing Company. We're kicking off a race to reduce waste and kind of highlighting some of the local breweries in our community that are kind of taking sustainable action, if you will. So if you want to continue the conversation, you are all welcome to head on over there after the conclusion of the program. Thank you.
Well, Erin, so
farther back, please. There you go.
Glad to have you as the new Executive Director of Environmental Defenders. Welcome to you. So glad to introduce Marina Minnick tonight. She works on the as the Solar Programs Coordinator for Citizens Utility Board, actually my favorite organization of all time. They are for us. In Illinois, so if you get a chance, talk to her about all the awesome things they do. She has her bachelor's degree in chemistry and environmental studies and has experience in organizing around clean energy. In her role at CUB, Marina works to educate communities about solar, advocate for and implement clean energy policy, and engage in one-on-one consumer assistance. She's our helper. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks everyone. I'm sorry I'm going to stand behind this podium so I can switch my slides. But thank you for being here tonight, and thanks for the introduction. Again, my name is Marina Minnick, and I'm the Solar Programs Coordinator at Citizens Utility Board, otherwise known as CUB. And tonight, we've all come to a solar power hour where we spend most of our time talking about solar basics, benefits, and incentives. And then at the end, I will also be talking about the Solar Switch Chicagoland program, which is a group buy program that CUB puts on every year. Or this is our fourth time doing it since 2019. The two main administrators of this program, first is the MREA, or Midwest Renewable Energy Association. They are an educational organization that spreads renewable energy through offering different types of courses for people who are interested in kind of getting into the solar industry or the solar space. So they have all types of courses that you can join, and they also put on an energy fair every summer around the end of June where thousands of people all over the Midwest come to learn more about renewable energy and things surrounding it. I was there last summer and learned about farming or gardening for fall. So they have all kinds of things, not just energy, but it's pretty fun. And then, like I said, I'm with Citizens Utility Board, or CUB, and we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that focuses on consumer protections for utility ratepayers. So essentially, if you pay any kind of bill, we want to be there fighting for you. We have a legal team that fights rate hikes and things of that nature. We have an outreach team, which I'm part of, where we go out to communities and talk to people about their bills and things like solar. And then we also have a consumer advocacy team that mans our hotline during weekdays 9 to 5. So if you ever have any questions about your bill or questions about solar, you can give us a call and get your questions answered. Or if you have any issues with your utility, that team can also help to file a complaint on your behalf and help you to resolve that issue. So yeah, CUB is great. together, these organizations run the Solar Switch program. So tonight, we are going to focus on solar education. So we're going to go through the benefits, basics, and incentives of solar, and then we'll also quickly go through different solar options. So leasing versus owning, community solar, and an income eligible program called Solar for All. And then we'll finish off with the group buy and how that works and what it looks like. So first, the benefits of solar. Solar is very popular right now, and it's been getting a lot cheaper since solar cells first came online back in the 1950s. Scientists have been working on improving the technology ever since then in order to make them more efficient, and that's why, a main reason why we're seeing that price come down. Currently in the United States, we have over 140 gigawatts of installed capacity, which is enough electricity to power 25 million American homes. So that's a pretty big number, kind of cool, but also not that big when you think of the entire United States population. So we still definitely have a long way to go, but things are trending towards solar right now. Solar accounted for 50% of all new electric generating capacity additions in 2022, which is more than any other energy source for the 4th year in a row. What that means is we have put more solar onto the grid than anything else for 4 years in a row, which is a really great trend as well. And then finally, Zillow even found that homes with solar will sell for around 4.1% more than similar homes that do not have solar. So in the end, solar kind of pays for itself as well and can help to boost your property value. Solar is also really good for our environment. I know I'm here with Citizens Climate Lobby and the Environmental Defenders, so I'm gonna assume most of you are environmentalists, but currently we are producing most of our power by burning fossil fuels in this country. When we do that, we are emitting carbon dioxide and other harmful greenhouse gases. These gases contribute to climate change. And I'm gonna speed through this. Climate change is bad and we should stop it. And I'm gonna assume I'm preaching to the choir here. And one of the best ways to do that is from switching to renewable energy. When renewable energy produces electricity, it is not constantly emitting CO2 into our atmosphere. This stat on the screen says the average solar system will offset over 260,000 pounds of CO2 over the course of 25 years. Which is equivalent to any one of these statements on the screen. So that's a lot. And another thing, another benefit from switching from burning fossil fuels to renewables is we are also emitting less harmful air pollutants into our air and to our water. When we burn fossil fuels, we're emitting nitrous oxides, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter emissions. Those are all very bad for our health. They're bad for the air and the water. By switching to renewables, we're helping to reduce that. So all around a win for the wallet, people, and the planet when thinking about solar. So now we can go into the basics here. One of the first questions I get about solar is, does Illinois get enough solar or get enough sun for solar to be worth it? Short answer is yes, so I like to prove it with this solar irradiance map on the screen. So we can see we have the United States on the screen. The red is where we get the most amount of sun, so Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California. And then the blue and purple is where we get the least amount of sun. You can kind of see in the corner, Pacific Northwest, also Alaska, is where we get the least amount of sun. And then Illinois is kind of in the middle in that green color. And then we also have Germany on the screen. So Germany actually has the highest solar capacity per capita in the entire world. They have very ambitious climate goals to go along with that. And they get about as much sun as Seattle. So I always say if they can do it with that much sun, then Illinois can most definitely do that as well. So how does solar actually work? This is going to be an extreme oversimplification of the science of solar panels, but essentially, solar panels are a semiconductor made of silicon. So in step one, most important thing is that sun is shining down onto those solar panels. And since they're semiconductors, they're actually able to absorb the energy coming out of the sun. That energy will make the electrons move around, and once they start moving, we have a current, which we see in number 2. So solar panels actually produce something called DC power, or direct current power. That is not what's usable in our homes or on the grid. We actually use AC power, or alternating current. So then it needs to go through number 3. That DC power needs to go through an inverter, and the inverter will convert that DC power into AC power. So once it's through the inverter, that power is usable by the home and the grid. And then kind of number 4 shows that anything that needs power in your home can then be powered by the electricity from the panels, and any excess electricity that you may produce can be sent back to the utility grid, where you will be compensated for it through something called net metering, which I will talk about in much more detail later on. But that's kind of how we produce electricity from the sun all the way to the utility grid. So a little bit more information on inverters. Like I mentioned, inverters are what convert the DC power into AC power. And we also think of inverters as the brain of the system. So they can monitor the production and the efficiency of the system. And inverters come with either a website or a phone app that you can check up on that production and efficiency, just to make sure that your system is healthy and working well. So this is a really small example, but right up front in the tablet, there's one panel that's way darker than the rest. That might be because there's a branch over that panel that gets shading during parts of the day. But if you know that there's no way it could be shade, then maybe something's wrong with that panel and you want to get it checked out. So it makes it really easy to figure out what's going on if something is wrong, and then you can quickly contact your installer. And then this is going to be the most technical part of the presentation, but I do like to talk about the 3 different kinds of inverters that you could get, just so you know what your installer is talking about when they are going through their proposal for you. I think that's important. So the original inverter is called the string inverter. So the way a string inverter works is all the panels are strung up to one single inverter. The good part about a string inverter is that it is the cheapest, but we typically only see them in commercial systems. And the reason for that is if one panel is underproducing, that will affect the production of the rest of the system, kind of like a kink in the hose. If you get a kink, it kind of affects the rest of the hose. So most residential systems are going to have some type of shading throughout the day, and string inverters will not protect against that. So that's why they're better for commercial systems that are maybe on top of a tall building that doesn't experience shade, or in the middle of the field, something like that. The 2 other options are much more popular for residential systems. So first we have the microinverter. Just like its name, it's a microinverter that is under every single panel. This is the most expensive option, but it does mean that even if you get shading on one part of your system, it will not affect the production of the rest of the system. It also allows for that module level monitoring that we saw with the example with the app. That gives you the ability to tell how much each of your panels are producing. And then power optimizers are typically seen as the kind of the middle option. So cheaper than microinverters, more expensive than a string inverter. How this works is you actually would have a string inverter, and then you would have something called an optimizer under each panel that would help to produce production, even if a different part of the system is experiencing shading. So yeah, kind of a compromise between the 2. I have 2 brand names on the screen, Enphase and SolarEdge, and those are pretty much the only 2 companies that you're going to encounter that are making microinverters or power optimizers. So just to keep that in mind, if you're trying to do research on inverters, it's pretty much going to be these 2 options there. All right, technical stuff out of the way. Now we can talk about the actual site that you would put solar panels on and what makes for a suitable site. So most important thing is you need sun. The most important hours to get sun are from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. That is what we call the solar window. So if you're getting some shading at 5, 6 p.m. or earlier in the morning, that's not as big of a deal as getting a bunch of shade right during those hours. Another important thing is the direction of your system. So a south-facing system is going to be the most ideal due to the direction of the sun and the earth. East and west are still good, but they will require around 10 to 20% more panels than a south-facing system would. And north is not ideal unless you have a very low pitch, maybe 5 to 10 degrees, then that could still work. But again, most important thing is that we're avoiding shading. One note is that we never recommend cutting down a big tree in order to get panels, because that has benefits of its own. If you don't really have a good idea on how much sun your roof is receiving, you can always go to Google Project Sunroof. That program allows you to type in your address and it'll populate an image like the one on the screen, and you can zoom to your house and actually see how much solar exposure your roof is getting. This program will also try to give you quotes and your average usage, and I wouldn't listen to that data as much. I would go to an actual installer for that, but it is a good starting point if you want to get an image of your roof. Some other thing to consider, solar panels are not attached directly to the roof. Most installers will actually attach an aluminum railing system to your roof. That will penetrate the roof, but installers do seal that adequately, and if something goes wrong, check your contract, but it's typically going to be on the installer to fix that. And then panels are attached onto that railing system. And then some other considerations, we can talk about weather. I know we have some pretty crazy weather here in the Midwest. So first is snow. Any long-term coverage of your panels with snow will not do any damage. They are rated to withstand that. But of course, if they're completely covered, they're not going to produce any electricity. Typically, as the sun shines or snow starts to melt, as long as a corner of the snow from the corner of your system can kind of melt off, that small part of the system will produce electricity. And panels heat up ever so slightly when they do produce electricity. So heating up helps to melt off the rest of the snow on the system. That being said, you do want to think about where you're putting your system, because if it's above a walkway, you might be getting large clumps of snow falling down all at once. So just keep that in mind when working with your installer to design the system. Next is hail. Panels are rated to withstand 1-inch hail going 50 miles per hour. So just an anecdote, one of Cubs board members over in Rockford last summer got a hailstorm, and his panels were fine, but he had to replace the roof. So panels are pretty strong. Too bad about the roof. And then wind loading, some people get concerned that the gap between the roof and the panels can cause a wind sail. That also would not happen. There's only about a 2 to 3 inch gap in between the roof and the panels, so no need to worry about that. Roof condition is very important. Most solar panels are warranted for 25 years and often last longer, so you will want a roof that can last the length of that lifetime. So if you are around 5 to 10 years out from needing a new roof, you may want to consider either waiting to get panels or replacing that roof a little sooner. The only reason we say that is if you do have to replace your roof halfway through, you will have to pay to take those panels down and then put them back up, which is basically the labor cost of the system, which is usually around a third of what your system originally cost. So it can be pretty expensive. And then finally, squirrels. If you have a squirrel problem in your yard, there's actually something called a critter guard that you can ask your installer about. It's a black plastic lining that goes around the system and will seal that gap between the roof and the panels. and keep those critters out so that they can't get at the wires. So it's another thing to consider. So when panels are put on the home, they are, a common system would be what we call a grid-tied system. So your home and your panels would actually still be connected to the utility grid. The reason for that is then you can send excess electricity back to the grid when you don't need it, and you can pull electricity from your utility grid when the sun isn't shining. If you do choose to do a grid-tied system, you should just know that if the power goes out, your power and your panels will also shut down. That is a code called rapid shutdown. It's in order to protect linesmen who may be doing repairs, so that all will shut down. If you don't like that, there's always an option to get a battery and a transfer switch. So then if the power goes out, you can switch to your battery and still power a couple of loads in your home. But batteries are still very expensive. I'm not a battery expert, but they're around $13,000 for one, and that definitely wouldn't cover an entire home. So I would say if you have the extra cash laying around, a battery could be fun, or if you have a kind of important reason to need constant power, maybe you have medical supplies you need to power, something like that, then it could be a good idea. Or if you experience pretty frequent power outages. But if you don't, or it doesn't bother you, then we would, it's not an essential thing when going solar to get a battery, but always an option. Instead of a battery, we have something called net metering, which I've alluded to multiple times now. And net metering is the program that allows utilities to compensate you when you send excess electricity back to the grid. So anytime you produce more than you use, the meter on your home will track the amount of electricity that you're sending back to the grid. And in the end, you will never pay for the electricity that your panels produced, and if you send excess electricity back, you will actually be credited for that amount of electricity. ComEd offers one-to-one net metering, which means you will be credited at the same rate that you're being charged for electricity. It is a law currently that investor-owned utilities in the state offer one-to-one, so not trying to pat ComEd on the back too much because they're required to do it, but it is a really good policy that we have in Illinois, and definitely not all states have that. And then the way it works is typically in the summer, you're producing a lot of electricity and a lot of excess electricity. So those credits are rolling over month to month and building up. And then when winter rolls around and your panels aren't producing as much, those credits can then still be applied to your bill and continue to bring it down, even if you weren't producing as much electricity. And then credits do expire at the end of April annually. So there is no incentive to build a system that is way larger than you need, because those credits will expire anyways. And then net metering will also never completely zero out your bill if you're under the standard rate plan. However, has anyone ever heard of or signed up to hourly pricing? Yes? Okay. So hourly pricing, if you're signed up for that, you actually can zero out your bill and your credits never expire. That being said, ComEd will also never write you a check for that amount of credits, so they can also just forever build up on your bill. But just to quickly explain, hourly pricing is just a different rate structure. So most of us are on the standard rate plan, which means we pay a certain price per kilowatt hour. It doesn't matter what time of day we use that kilowatt hour, it's gonna be the 7 cents per kilowatt hour, or whatever it is at the time. Hourly pricing actually allows you to pay the market rate per hour for that electricity. So typically with hourly pricing, prices are very low at night, maybe 1 to 2 cents, sometimes they even dip negative. During the day, they're still typically lower, but during peak hours of usage, like 3 to 8 p.m., kind of, sometimes they can spike a bit. So the point of that program is to incentivize people to use less electricity during the times of the day that most people are using the most electricity.
But so do you still get credit at the standard rate?
You get the credit at the rate that it's produced.
So if you're on the hourly, then
Yeah.
the rate, the credit you would get would be based on what the hourly rate is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I'd just like to bring this up. Hourly pricing in solar can be a pretty good combination, just because you are able to completely zero out that bill and you don't have to worry about your credits expiring. So here's an example of a ComEd bill, so I'll kind of talk through it quickly. On the top, we have meter information, which we all already have that on the top of our ComEd bill. That's where ComEd tells us how much electricity we used from the grid that month. When you go solar, they would add an additional line item underneath that shows how much electricity you send back to the grid. So you can see in this example, this person used 420 kilowatt hours and they produced 600. So the first 420 kilowatt hours will be netted out, and then the excess 180 kilowatt hours will roll over to the next month. So I'll kind of point that out. Under miscellaneous is where they keep track of those excess credits. So now on this month's bill, under miscellaneous, we have 180 kilowatt hours that can roll over to later months and be applied as needed. And then here is where those first 420 kilowatt hours are applied to the bill. They're applied under supply, delivery, and taxes and fees. And the reason why under the standard rate plan, why your bill isn't completely zeroed out is because under the delivery section, the first two line items are the customer charge and the standard metering charge, and those are not netted out with solar credits. But hourly pricing just uses a slightly different billing structure where it keeps track of them in monetary credits instead of kilowatt hours, so then they're able to be netted out. And that's a little complicated, so, but that's kind of the
How does
reason
one
why.
validate those kilowatt hours?
Sorry?
How do you validate the kilowatt hours?
They'll just be automatically applied to the bill.
So the homeowner can't verify that what ComEd is stating on the bill is,
Oh,
that's what I'm saying.
yeah, so your smart meter will keep track of them, but I guess, so your inverter tracks production, so the ComEd bill doesn't actually track how much electricity your panels produce, it's just tracking how much electricity they're sending back to the grid. But I suppose if you could look at your inverter and see how much you're producing total and maybe do the math, and if you see a discrepancy, I'm not 100% sure, but I wonder.
There's a company right now, I think it's called Span, that's been advertising like a super smart electric panel, which would literally track and give you access to not only all the usage by device within your house, but also what you're sending back or what you're generating.
It's an additional panel you have to
Yeah,
install.
but I'm sure it's a luxury item, but they're advertising on the internet now. It's a new like a smart electrical panel that would do something with you.
But I would say, I mean, if they were putting the wrong number down,
T-PAC,
okay, yeah, let me just, finish this question. I think, like, typically if something's wrong on your ComEd bill, you can submit a complaint and they can fix that, so I think that would fall under that same category. So if you were concerned that ComEd wasn't,
Well, you know, where the utility is a utility.
yeah, I understand, yeah.
Well, and our charges are based on estimates now, aren't they? I mean, they don't actually bill us based on what our meters say,
Not from how they
If you
do
have
that
net
usage.
metering though, then it's actual.
Okay.
And do you have a smart meter?
We have,
Yeah.
Okay.
you usually when you get solar, you have to get a smart
Yep,
meter. You have to have one installed.
Okay,
So
okay.
if your bill says estimate, we should talk after, because that's
Okay.
probably not
Mine-
accurate.
ours
does not.
Okay.
It doesn't,
Okay.
okay. Did you have a question?
Well, I don't know about your property.
Oh, Enphase has an additional optional thing that'll you can look and see how much you're using
Mhm.
and how much you're producing on it.
Yeah.
It keeps a record.
Mhm.
And I don't think it will adapt to our system. It only goes with the newer Enphase systems.
We have an older one.
Okay. Yeah. So does your system track amount of production?
Yes.
You look at that.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to think about how you could do the
Mhm.
math to make sure that comment's being truthful.
I figure we get at least 1 0 bill a year
Yeah.
because of the hourly pricing and everything else.
Mhm.
And on the hourly pricing, they alert you the day before and tell you what hours the price is gonna be higher, and you can decide whether or not you wanna use electric during that.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. I've never been asked it before, so I haven't put much thought towards it, but yeah, definitely a good thing to consider. And then finally, I like to talk a little bit about energy efficiency. It's important to make sure that your home is as efficient as possible before going solar. You don't want to put a giant system on a very inefficient home, right? You can save a little bit of money if you tighten up your home a bit. So some easy things to think about: LED lighting. If you are in need of updating an appliance, you could think about getting an Energy Star appliance, making sure your home is properly weatherized in both the winter and summer. And then electricity usage habits also make a big difference. So even just making sure that you're turning your lights off when you're leaving the room and unplugging things from the wall when you're not using them can make a difference. ComEd also has a tab on their website called comed.com/ways to save. They have some rebates for Energy Star appliances, so if you're going to get one, definitely take advantage of the rebates. And then they also have a program called the Home Energy Assessment, which is on the Ways to Save tab, and it's a free program where ComEd will send someone out to your home and they'll do a quick walkthrough of the home, come up with a report of ways that you can be more energy efficient, and you'll get some freebies. I know you'll get a limited amount of LED light bulbs, a programmable thermostat if you don't already have one, up to 6 feet of hot water pipe insulation, shower heads, faucet aerators. So completely free program. In fact, you actually pay for it on a line item under taxes and fees, so might as well take advantage of it. And then just to wrap up this whole section, things to consider before speaking with your installer. First, you want to think about your roof and that solar site. So does your roof have good solar exposure? Which direction is it facing? And when do you anticipate re-roofing? Also think about your home's energy efficiency and what you could do to improve that. And then also thinking about what adders might be needed for your project. When I say that, I mean, do you need a critter guard, or thinking about other upfront costs that you may encounter. So say you do need a new roof, how much will that add on? Do you need an upgraded electrical panel, things like that. Also something to consider if you are planning on buying an electric vehicle or electrifying your home, you may want to talk to your solar installer about that so that they can build a system that will meet your future needs. So if you're gonna get an electric vehicle, they can oversize the system a little bit so that in 2 years when you get the vehicle, you don't have to go get another couple panels, because that can be kind of a pain to do. So just tell your installer all of your plans so they can build you a system you're happy with. Next we can talk about incentives for solar. So current incentives can reduce total cost up to 70%, it's usually around 60 to 70%. So we have the state solar renewable energy credits, which cover around 30 to 40% of total project cost. We have the federal tax credit, which is set at 30%. And then of course that utility net metering really helps as well, because you can get some pretty low bills each month, which help you to pay that system back faster. And then random fact that I like to throw in this slide is that your homeowners association is not allowed to outright block you from going solar if you own your roof. So if they say no and don't give a reason, that's illegal. However, they are allowed to implement annoying rules, like the solar can't be seen from the street or something like that. That's still allowed, but they can't say no for no reason. And I'll get into each of these in more detail. So the first one that I mentioned is the Solar Renewable Energy Credit, or SREC. SRECs come from a program called Illinois Shines. And for a little history lesson, Illinois Shines is our state solar incentive program, and it was created back in 2016 with the Future Energy Jobs Act, or FEJA, and then it was expanded and re-upped in 2021 with the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, otherwise known as CEJA. So we have FEJA and CEJA, and these two pieces of legislation are very important. Kind of allowed Illinois to be a leader in the Midwest for climate policy. So what is Illinois Shines? Illinois Shines allows people in the state to essentially sell their SRECs through this program and secure a better deal for those SRECs and receive the entire incentive all at once. So for a little more background, what's an SREC, or what's a renewable energy credit? So a renewable energy credit is produced every time a renewable energy system produces 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy. So 1,000 kilowatt hours equals 1 REC, or specifically solar, we call it an SREC. So through Illinois Shines, when you do go solar, your installer or an SREC aggregator that they're working with will estimate the amount of electricity that your panels will produce over the course of 15 years. And with that, they can estimate the amount of SRECs that your system is going to produce. And if you were to sell your SRECs through a different private market, you could probably sell them one SREC at a time, or you definitely wouldn't get 15 years worth all at once. So that's the nice part of this program. And the state decides on an SREC price every year. They have a formula, so each year they'll upgrade that price. Currently it's around $83, so you get your number of SRECs that your system will produce over 15 years, multiply it by $83, and that's going to be your SREC incentive. And you will typically receive that money around 6 to 12 months after your system is installed. It takes a little while to do that application, but anyone is able to get this incentive. It's not tax-based at all, so it's a really good incentive that usually ends up coming out to be 30 to 40% of total cost of going solar, so that's pretty great. And a couple other more negative things. SRECs are considered taxable income because they are a form of income, and then if your company, your solar installer, is working with an SREC aggregator, which most of them do, they will typically take around a 10% cut, because that's their entire business. But even after that, that incentive will be around 30 to 40%. So still a good incentive.
But you get it in 1 year.
Yeah.
Then it's gonna, if it's like $83 per credit and you get 1 credit per year, then it's gonna be about $1,500. Maybe
per REC,
per
so
REC.
$83 per REC.
Yeah.
And the average solar system produces around 9,000 kilowatt hours a year.
Okay.
So 9 times 15 times
So about $7,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Good math. So next we can do the federal incentive. So this is a tax credit set at 30%. It covers labor cost, system installation, interconnection wiring, and batteries. So if you were thinking about batteries, you could get, that would be included in this tax credit. The homeowner must be, or the home must be owned by the taxpayer, but it does not need to serve as the principal residence. And this is a non-refundable tax credit, so it reduces what you owe on your income, your federal income taxes. If it's more than what you owe in a year, it can roll over and you can repeat the process the next year. So if you don't owe any federal income taxes, not a useful credit, but if you do, it can help to cover around 30% of your project. So those added together, 60 to 70%, that's pretty significant in terms of incentives. Yep.
So this would cover a battery system added to an existing residential solar photovoltaic system?
I am going to say I think so. Yeah.
Is there a maximum, limit on that?
No, there's no maximum. I feel pretty confident that a new battery would, apply to, or this would apply to a new battery.
This is a really cool thing about the Inflation Reduction Act, is that they don't have ceilings on expenditures, so, you know, people can go crazy and you can
Yeah.
measure capacity.
Awesome. So then, and we'll have some time for questions at the end
Gets
if people think
reelected.
of more. But your options for going solar, so I'd like to talk through a few different things that people might be seeing out and about. So first I want to talk about different options you have for a rooftop solar system. So the most common one, and the thing that people think of when thinking of going solar, is owning those panels. So you purchase the panels outright, which means you receive the state incentive, the federal incentive, utility net metering, electricity from the panels, and you have to take care of the upfront costs of that system and pay for it, right? So there are two other options that I just want to talk about. So the first one is leasing the system. So when you lease a system, company will put the panels on your home, but they will remain the owner of those panels. So they get the state incentive and the federal incentive, and they have to pay for the system, right? But you don't get the panels for free. You need to essentially pay a monthly rent back to this company each month for that electricity. So a lease is a fixed monthly fee, and then a power purchase agreement. Instead of a fixed monthly fee, it's a price per kilowatt hour that you're paying. So the more your panels produce, probably the more that you're going to pay, because you're kind of paying for the actual amount of electricity you're receiving. So a couple of things to look out for. First, many leases and PPAs include a cost escalator. They're allowed to include up to a 2.9% annual cost escalator. So at the end of a 20-year lease, you could be paying 50% more than you were at the start of that lease. They're also not guaranteed to be good deals. You'd have to look at your proposal and kind of do the math, see how much you'd be saving by having panels, and then how much that monthly rent is. And then finally, they can also make things pretty tricky if you move, so you definitely would want to check that contract. And overall, we definitely recommend that you fully explore your ownership options before going for a lease or a power purchase agreement. Over the course of 25 years, consumers definitely save more money by going the ownership route rather than lease or PPA. But the reason why lease or PPA is usually appealing is because you are able to avoid those upfront costs. So.
And what about maintenance costs, you know, things like that? I mean, if you lease, then they're responsible for everything that happens.
Yeah, if you lease, they're responsible. The nice thing about panels is they don't move, so they don't really break. I think you might have to replace a microinverter or a power optimizer every once in a while, maybe 3 or 4 throughout the lifetime, but besides that, panels are pretty low maintenance. I know you have panels, you want to test?
Yeah, we haven't done anything on ours, right?
Yeah, so.
Washed them.
It's nice that they don't move. So again, with the leasing and PPA, a lot of times you'll see companies advertising free solar panels. That's usually what they're referring to, is they're not free, you have to pay for them every month.
So you said you might have to replace an inverter or something else, what?
I just said power optimizer.
Power optimizer, okay.
Yeah.
The things are under the.
Yeah,
Right.
like potentially a electrical component might have to be replaced.
Okay, thank you.
Did you say you had to get up on the roof and wash them every now and then?
You don't have to.
We just thought we'd optimize it.
They clean off in the rain pretty good, if it rains. The snow sliding off seems to clean in the winter. But I've gone up with, I forget what it's called, spray and forget or whatever. You hook it up on the end of the garden hose and just spray the panels down and then rinse them off. So you don't have to scrub them. I've got a metal roof, so it's kind of tricky walking around.
It's a steep pitch.
It's a gambrel roof, it's a barn shape, so the upper part that you need to get onto too.
Yeah,
It's
okay. No,
Flatter.
I'm surprised
They
to
have
hear
to-
that.
kinda steep and then it just drops off.
And at Cub, we never wanna tell someone to go up on their roof.
Yeah.
necessarily, so you can decide for
Well-
yourself if you find it necessary or wanna
Especially
pay
not
someone to do it once in a
After
while.
a certain
but
age.
Yeah.
Definitely don't do it in the winter.
Mhm.
So that's kind of owning versus leasing. And then next I want to talk about community solar. So this is a good program as well, and it's kind of designed for people who are not able to get solar panels or just don't want them. So it's good for renters or people in condos who don't have ownership over the roof. Also great if you have a lot of shading or again don't really want to go through the hassle. So community solar allows you to subscribe to a small portion of a community solar farm that's listed somewhere in your utility territory. So there are around 8 companies that are currently offering community solar, and each and every one of them have an offer. So if you try to sign up for them, they'll ask you for your average electrical usage and assign you a subscription based on your usage. So if you use more electricity, you'll get a larger subscription, so on. And then each month when your subscription produces electricity, the company will kind of let ComEd know how much, and it's a more official process than that. And you'll actually receive a credit on your electric bill for that amount of electricity produced. And then you'll still need to pay for that electricity as well through something called the subscription fee. But currently, thanks to CEJA again, most of these farms get some funding from the state and are allowed to pass on some of those savings to consumers. So they all are offering either a 10 or a 20% discount, which means, for example, if you saved $100 on your ComEd bill, you'd only be paying $80 back to the community solar farm for that electricity. You can kind of think of it as a power purchase agreement where you're paying for the amount of electricity that your panels produce, but with this program, it's at a slightly lower rate than what ComEd would be charging. So really nice program. There are a lot of companies which can make it a little confusing. So Cub has a website, solarinthecommunity.com. We list all of those companies and have a comparison chart that lists them side by side, so you can kind of see how they're different and try to pick the one that looks best to you.
So
And
we just had a number of presentations to the county board, and one of the providers made a distinction between traditional community solar and a different one, and I asked why he chose the one, and he said, well, it's because the state only gives 1 grant per year. Do you know, is that per
community-driven
county?
community solar, is that what?
Well, there were a bunch of different baskets of incentives, you know, from the state, and he said, you know, we chose this because it was the one that was available. But I don't know whether that was for a region or a county or
I'll
whatever.
say, yeah, the funding for traditional community solar dries up very fast, or not dries up, but is used up each year very
Okay.
quickly. So I'm assuming he was talking about
Okay.
community-driven community solar, which I don't even know if I could define. It has more community benefits, I guess, and that pocket of money usually is not used up as quickly. So,
Okay.
yeah. Community solar can sometimes have a long wait list because I think developers are having a hard time keeping up with demand of people wanting to sign up. All right, and then the final program before we get into the group buy, which will just be a couple slides, is Solar for All. So Solar for All is Illinois' income eligible solar program. It's essentially the sister program to Illinois Shines. So it provides incentives for income eligible individuals, and there's also a category for nonprofits and public facilities. Those are determined based on HUD census tract maps. So if your nonprofit or public facility landed in one of those zones, they would also qualify for this program. And the benefits, there is no money down and guaranteed savings monthly through this program. If you were to get solar on your home, it would probably be through a lease or a power purchase agreement, but again, with this program, guaranteed savings. So you wouldn't have to worry about essentially being ripped off by a solar company charging you too much month to month. And then to qualify, you must be at or below 80% area median income. So in this area. That's around $83,000 for a family of 4. And you can find more information at illinoissfa.com, or I'll stick around after if you want to talk about it more. But if you qualify, this is hands down the best way to go solar. So I always like to bring it up for people toward the end. And now we can get up into Solar Switch Chicagoland finally. So Solar Switch is a group buy program that allows people to go solar at a lower rate, and we secure that rate using both purchasing power. So I kind of want to talk about how we run our programs. For a little bit of background, I know at the beginning I said we work with the MREA, and they have been running programs in the Midwest since 2013. They're now in around 6 states, and they started here in Illinois in 2019 doing these group buy programs. So how does the solar group buy work? First, we really care about education. That's kind of first and foremost, which is why most of this presentation has been generally about solar, and now I'm going to rush through the last 3 minutes to talk about this program, because whether or not you go solar through the program, we really just want to make sure people are educated consumers and kind of know what to look for when thinking about going solar. So these solar power hours are something we do all over the area to help reach people and talk about solar first and foremost. But you are also able to go solar through this program. So at the start, we have a vetting process where we will competitively select qualified installers to be part of the program. This year we actually have 2 installers, which is the first time we have chosen to do a multi-installer program, but Chicagoland is very big and it would not be fair to try to force one installer to do all of the projects. So we work with them to go through a reverse auction in order to get them to settle on the same price. So these 2 installers are offering the same price. So whichever one you get will be okay, same price, they pass the same qualification process, and people are split up based off of geographical location. So, and then this year we also have something a little new. We have a registration portal. So if you are interested in seeing how much solar would cost you through the program, I have these sheets on that back table with the big yellow circle at the top, and has the website on them. So if you are interested, you'd go to the online portal, sign up, ask for contact information, and then there's a short questionnaire that you would fill out. And those are questions about your home and your roof and your electric usage. And from there you would actually get a proposal, kind of a simple estimated proposal that shows how much electricity or how big size of system you need and how much that system would cost you. And if that looks okay to you, you're then able to pay to move forward. So it's a $150 fully refundable deposit to move forward. So then you would get connected with your installer, get a better estimate, and then sign your contract and go solar maybe. If you go solar, that $150 would be put toward the project. And if for any reason you decide you don't want to, then it's a refund. And the only reason we really have the deposit is so that only more interested or seriously interested people move forward, because our problem the last couple of years is that installers were doing proposals for hundreds of people who maybe weren't interested, and that takes a lot of time and money. So I think this year we were actually able to secure a lower program price due to that model.
So you've negotiated a price with these 2 solar installers. Is that based upon the size of the system, just in terms of kilowatt hours, or what is it? What is it based on? It's a price per watt.
It's a price per watt. Yep, that's, you almost answered it. Price per watt. So, and I'm gonna show an example here, so I'll kind of explain how that works. A lot of installers will usually talk about the overall price per system in terms of price per watt, and that blends in the actual materials, you know, the panels, the labor, permitting fees, and interconnection fees. So that kind of blends everything into this one price per watt. And so on the screen, I actually do have the program pricing. So I took a 6.5 kilowatt size system, which is the average size system here in Illinois. And just for a side note, that's kind of how installers will typically refer to the size of the system, is by the kilowatt, rather than number of panels. So we got a 6.5 kilowatt size system with a starting base price of $2.75 per watt. I just multiplied those two together to get $17,875 for that base starting price. And then for fun, I added a critter guard because I know I have squirrel problems and would probably need one. So we end up at around $18,625 for.
I'm sorry, is that for like about a 2,500 square foot home? That would cover a 2,500 square foot home?
Yeah.
Approximately.
If it's positioned exactly where it needs to be positioned with the right amount of panels?
I would say. It might be 6.5 to 7K, maybe 7.
Ours is a lot smaller,
Okay.
because we have more installation, and
Yeah.
there's only 2 of us.
So it depends on a lot of things, but this is on average, if you talk to installer, they do a lot of 6.5 kilowatt size systems, or 6.5 to 7 kilowatt. So I would say this is quite average. And so yeah, we get around $18,600, and then we go ahead and apply those incentives. So first is the tax credit set at 30%, which takes off $5,500, and then the Illinois SRAC incentive, which takes off another around $6,100. And just for those of you who may be curious, that came out to around 33% of total cost, so a little more on the conservative side. And then in the end, $6,800 or $6,900 for what you owe, or what the system will cost. But I do like to mention that at the start, you do owe that $18,000. Those incentives won't come back to you for another 6 to 12 months, so that's important to keep in mind. And both of our program installers have financing options that they can recommend as well. So then for some numbers, this person in this example will have first year electric bill savings of around $1,300. This is assuming that their system is sized to meet 100% of their usage. And then payback period would be around 5.5 years, and cash gained over 25 years would be around $25,000. So solar panels are a really great investment because you are able to kind of buy all of your future electricity up front, and then from there get cheaper electricity. All of these numbers also assume that the electric rate stays the same, which probably won't happen, so you can imagine they'd be even a little better. And then down at the bottom, I just like to show that the program pricing is that $2.75 per watt, and the market price right now in Illinois is closer to $3.30 per watt. So that this group buy knocks off another $1,000 potentially than what it could have been.
That's an amazing sales job.
Now, the first slide that you had did not list McHenry County, the very first slide.
Oh yes, someone pointed that out. McHenry is included.
Okay.
So, yes.
So, is this the kind of thing that I knock on doors and talk to my neighbors? How does this go over? Do people buy this? I mean, do they say, God, I wish I could do that, it makes so much sense? Or do they, I'm really interested in not accelerating this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, I mean, I go to solar, or I plan these solar educational events, and I think most people who show up are already interested in solar, so I'm not knocking door to door talking to people who may or may not be interested, so I'm not sure, but I know through the program we have 260 people already, because we're kind of getting toward the end here. We have 260 people who have paid the deposit to move on and talk to their installers, and then 23 of those people have signed the contract so far, but I think installers are still putting out proposals and things like that. And with this program, we run it yearly, so if you were to go online, register, go through everything. You would have officially until September 13th to make a decision on if you want to go solar, and unofficially until September 20th, I think. So I think we'll kind of keep it open for another week past that
Is that-
deadline.
The program renews on those dates, or the quote you get today is only good till that date?
Yeah, the quote you would get through this program right now would be good until that mid-September deadline. And then we'll run the program again and go through everything again, and I can't guarantee.
How often do you negotiate these group buy prices?
Every program, every new program. So this pricing is actually a lot lower than our program was last year, and we've made a lot of changes to the program from last year to this year, because we are working with an additional program administrator who creates the software for the online portal. And we also did a lot less of these solar power hours and did more of an online and letter sending campaign. So I think that helped save a lot of cost on everyone's end, which we can then put into the consumer, which is nice.
What's the lifespan?
So most panels are warranted for 25 years and typically last longer than that. I know they have a degradation rate of around 0.5% a year. So by 20 years, you can do the math. I think that's still around 80% efficient.
And is there any environmental impact?
I know a lot of people ask about recycling of solar panels, which I can't say what that will look like in 25 years. That's really hard to say, but I know there are a lot of organizations working on bolstering up solar recycling. I also know there's a pretty robust secondhand market for solar panels as well. A lot of farmers will buy a bunch of used solar
You know, because
panels.
it's like anything else that you build, when you manufacture, you gotta have natural resources.
Oh, yep.
Okay, to
Yes.
build anything.
Mhm.
So you're using still mining operations and so forth to
Yeah.
produce solar panels, just like you would a car, just like you would a truck, whatever. You know,
Yeah.
materials for building your home. So I'm just trying to make sure there's not a real, you know, environmental impact that's gonna be hazardous down the road.
Definitely.
There is some environmental impact for the
Yeah.
But I know there's
manufacturing
like aluminum and it could.
and
there's a
silica
drop off in
and,
silicon.
yeah, all that.
And those are the two main, is the aluminum and the silicon that are used in the panels. Yeah, so the answer is definitely yes to build anything. There's surely a environmental impact, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but here, there are no toxic chemicals, they can't leach toxic poisons into the ground or
No,
into
but
your.
when you're doing the actual mining for those materials,
That-
you
that-
still, it's a separate.
Agreed, but
separate
the things that
subject,
you're
but
mining.
nevertheless, no matter what you build, there's always some possibility of an environmental.
The active ingredient is basically silicon sand.
Yeah, aluminum's perfectly recyclable. We don't know that much about silicon yet, apparently.
I would say it's better. My bigger worry is about batteries usually, because those
Yeah.
have a lot more cobalt, lithium, nickel. But no, that's always, I think it's always important to continue to consider how things are being made and how we can continue to improve it. Because, you know, solar panels are a really good thing, so we wouldn't want to be causing too much bad. Well,
We're just gonna start building huge water towers again.
Yeah.
Where are most of the panels made?
Most of them are manufactured in Asia and then assembled in North America. I know you can get developers can get additional tax credit adders through the Inflation Reduction Act for domestic products. So I have a feeling in the next few years we'll be seeing that industry grow more in the
Right.
United States.
Right
But-
now, there's not enough manufactured in the
Yeah.
United States to supply all the need.
But I wonder what the Inflation Reduction Act will do. I think
Yeah.
it'll
They're working on it.
promote growth here. Yep.
So, again, this is like amazing. I know that there's incentives built in there. The tax credits, are those state, but are those based on federal?
The tax credit
It's
is
federal.
federal, based on federal income
based on the IRA?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep,
so there's
that's
no,
through the IRA.
there's no ceiling on that, that's not gonna go away unless there's some political catastrophe,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Okay, but otherwise it's strictly arbitrage, which is, you're getting a really good deal by pooling people's capital, basically. What I'm wondering about is, I did weatherization of my home, so that I can put a heat pump in and get a smaller heat pump. But I was really unhappy with the installer. I thought I paid extra money because I thought I was getting smarter people who really knew what they were doing, and then they did. Does CUB do any reviewing of installers of any of these phases of how we make our homes more electrical and more efficient? Because we have way oversized gas furnaces, right? The heat pumps don't have to be nearly as big if you have good air systems, right?
Yeah, heat pumps and decarbonization in general is something that CUB is really starting to work more on. You know, some of us know David Weaver. He works at CUB and he's leaving to go to law school. We just hired someone new, so I think we're hoping that this person can really focus a lot on that, because I have heard a lot of, you know, heat pumps are really something we want to promote and get people excited about, but then I've also heard some horror stories, because if they're not installed properly, they're not going to work like they should. And I think the installer for a heat pump is probably even more important than an installer for solar. I think solar is harder to mess up, maybe. So that is something that CUB wants to start looking into more. It takes a lot of work. Even people ask if I vet solar installers just generally, like if I have a giant list, and it's like, no, I can show you where to find complaints that are filed with the state, which is helpful, and we vet these ones, of course.
So you vetted those people.
But like every installer in Illinois, no.
Right.
That's a lot.
Well, I think that would be a really, especially given that heat pumps, we know that some contractors really felt like they got burned because they tried to do it for people and then people were very unhappy. They weren't very good heat pumps 20 years ago. We really need to be on a good learning curve for these things, and we want people to have good stories to tell their neighbors. But how we get information, I thought I did really good due diligence, and I think my home is better sealed now, but I just feel like it's hard to find people who really care about what they're doing, you know, and are on mission.
Yeah, definitely.
Illinois Solar Education Association has a list of installers, so they have a gazillion installers, and you can find them.
For solar.
Solar installers, you can find them, you can say you want them 20 miles from where you live, 50 miles from where you live. They do not rate them, but it does give you names and numbers and websites and all that kind of stuff.
This is one place where social media might be useful.
That's usually where I direct.
Asking television, about them, install it.
And that's what a solar installer will do, is have lists of people that you can call to talk about their installation. So, just like any other product, major product you purchase.
Yeah, references are good. And then kind of last thing about this slide is whether or not you're going through this program, I always recommend getting 3 quotes from 3 different solar installers, just so that you have something to compare to. I think 2 quotes isn't enough, because you still can't really see which one is maybe the weird one. I think 3 provides you with a pretty good base.
So even with through this program, you still would get.
I would say if you're going through this program.
But how do you do that if there's only 2? And like
That are vetted, yeah.
I thought you chose the installer.
Oh, just in general.
What do you look for in an installer?
Yeah, and that's a whole nother thing. I would also suggest starting at the Illinois Solar Energy Association. That's usually pretty easy way to find solar installers. And then what I do when someone calls me at CUB and asks me to see if this installer they're working with is good, is I will go to the Illinois Shines website, and they have an entire consumer protections database that shows yearly reports of complaints filed against installers and any installers that are currently suspended or expelled from that program. And installers can still operate in the state without being part of Illinois Shines, but you wouldn't want to work with them because there are then no protections and you can't get the state incentive. So that's my number one for solar, just checking that Illinois Shines website and seeing. But through this program, so this program, you're automatically assigned one installer. So just for peace of mind, I say go ahead and go. You can go find 2 other installers. Go to Illinois Solar Education Association, pick 2 out, make sure they're good from the Illinois Shines website, and if you get quotes from all 3, like 1 from this program and then 2 from outside installers, I think that could help maybe prove to you that this pricing is pretty good, but then also, I just want to make sure people are still doing their due diligence.
So what you're saying is apply to this program, but get 2 other bids as well.
If you'd like, yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
If you feel
Well, 'cause
good
they might-
about just
they might
going
tell you
through
you want a
Con, you can
different-
do that too,
A re-
but.
Now,
Right.
I
smaller
did-
system or a bigger system?
When I went through, Solar Edge website and got a quote, I had previously, several weeks ago, gotten a quote through another, website. So it was the same company as one of your 2, and the price indeed was about 25% less through Solar Edge.
Okay.
And the same company for the same size system,
Yeah,
so.
yeah,
The program
even,
does work.
yeah, even companies within this program, like this program pricing is cheaper than what they're offering
Yes.
outside of the program, yep.
What if you don't wanna have solar panels? All the solar farms that are being developed, especially the 6 now in Buchanan County, okay, and others like in Kane County, why cannot a homeowner tap into that particular solar farm
Oh, absolutely.
and not have
Yeah,
to
You
go
can.
through all of this?
Oh, absolutely.
How does an individual want that?
Just like she was just telling you.
Yeah, which slide was that one?
yeah, I would recommend looking at, Cub's website, solarandthecommunity.com.
Mhm.
There,
Okay.
essentially there's a lot of different companies that offer community solar. So we list all of them that we're aware of at least, and you can look through them, and we have a comparison chart that puts them side by side. So some of them offer 10%, other offer 20% discount, so you can decide which one
You know,
sounds
the
better.
city of Aurora just had initially, their own, solar farm. For the city of Aurora, that they would spread out to the individuals that reside in Aurora, and they're supposed to get some type of discount by tapping into that
Well, and the county just approved more installations in the county that are
in Kane County.
in McHenry County.
I know they did 6 of them.
No, but there's more just got approved.
Well, it was the 6 I'm talking about, that just happened last week.
Right,
Okay.
and one of those
Yeah, but-
was the plowshares, which is exactly that, it's the community solar, open to anybody in McHenry County.
The only thing, we have solar farms, the state of Illinois has different guidelines than the counties.
Mhm.
The counties are a little bit more restrictive, for whatever reason, looking at the site, what has to be done, how close to the holes, et cetera, where the state has stripped away a lot of the requirements that a county might impose on a solar farm. And that's what's happening right now in McHenry County. Those companies could appeal that and say they want less restrictions, like,
Correct.
Yeah, as far as the local farms go, I'm not 100% sure how you'd sign up for them, but I think they would probably reach out to you.
It's through the companies that develop them. I know like you can go to Next Amp,
Oh, okay.
and they'll,
Okay.
So that's all.
whether or not they have any
Right.
capacity
Yeah.
left. Right.
yeah, okay. Thank you.
Great, and I'll just flip to the last slide if there are any questions, but I know we've kind of been asking them throughout, so. Alright. Oh, yeah, thank you everyone.